Meeting for Monday, November 20th is now called to order. Andrea, would you please call the roll?
Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 1:09 p.m. As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Ms. Turner.
Present.
Ms. Conwell.
Present.
Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Ms. Simon. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Schron. Council President Jones.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Andrea. Has anyone signed in for public comment?
Yes, Judge Thomas O'Malley.
Thank you. Chairman Miller, President Jones, members of council, my name is Tom O'Malley. I am the administrative judge at juvenile court. I had the opportunity to watch testimony that was provided last week, and Councilman Gallagher was correct when he pointed out the testimony failed to tell the whole story. There was a story of a young man who was bound over and sent to prison for 21 years for carjacking. The report failed to reveal that this young man, during his fifth carjacking in less than 2 weeks, shot a young woman twice and left her on the sidewalk. No mention was made of the victim. Judges see and hear from victims every day in court. Victims who suffer PTSD after being robbed at gunpoint and are now afraid to leave their home or go to the gas station. Victims who have had their cars stolen and in some cases wrecked. Victims who find out that their insurance companies won't pay enough to make them whole. Our court's mission is certainly to rehabilitate juveniles, and we are committed and proud to do that work. But we also have a sacred duty to protect the community. That obligation was left out of prior testimony. Testimony last week included a chart that showed that Cuyahoga County has a higher bind-over rate than the other large counties. That is true. However, critical information again was omitted. I take no pleasure in reporting what we already know about our community, and that is Cleveland has one of the highest crime rates in the United States and significantly higher crime rate than the other large counties in Ohio that we're compared to. In fact, the latest FBI Uniform Crime Report indicates that of the 100 most populous cities in the United States, Cleveland is the 7th highest for violent crime per capita. Where does Cincinnati fall? 26th. Columbus, 63rd, and Toledo's at 100. Where does Cleveland fall for rape? 3rd. Murder, 7th. Robbery, 2nd. Cleveland is 38th for robbery. And let's talk about property crime or car thefts. Cleveland's 9th. Cincinnati's 42nd, and Columbus is 46th. Cleveland is 1st for burglary. Again, I take no pleasure in reporting this information about our community, but these are important facts that those who appeared before you didn't know or purposely ignored. I'm not sure which of those two is worse. Our bind-overs are higher than any other county because our rate of violent crime is significantly higher. It's like blaming the hospital for the crowded emergency room. As I testified at the budget hearing on November 2nd, we were not aware our budget for assigned counsel was reduced by $650,000 until we saw the proposed budget on October 3rd. We meet with Citizens Advisory Board and other community members on a regular basis. Every quarter, a group led by Gabrielle Celeste visits our detention center and independently interviews our residents asking about their treatment. They ask us questions, give us feedback, and often challenge us to improve. We welcome this from honest partners who pushed us to do better. These are honest partners, many of whom we have known for years, who took the time and asked questions and learn about juvenile justice. Some in the community feel the judge should stop doing bind-overs. We've explained that the state legislature makes the law, and if they would like the laws changed, I'd respectfully ask for another minute.
Please continue.
Thank you. And if they'd like the laws changed, they should gas up their cars and drive to Columbus. It's a bit like Kevin Stefanski demanding the referees not to allow anyone to hit the quarterback. Simply not the rule. We were asked to give all cases to the public defender. As I stated before, this is impossible due to the conflicts. For an attorney from assigned counsel to represent youth facing a bind-over, they must have extensive experience as a practicing lawyer. Ohio law does not require the same of someone employed in the public defender's office. As judges, our obligation is to ensure that the youth standing before us have the best legal representation available. While there are many fine attorneys in the public defender's office, appointing the public defender to every bind-over or every case is just not the correct thing to do. I will close by asking counsel to return the $650,000 that was removed and placed in the public defender's budget and return it to juvenile court. Thank you.
Pastor Napoleon Harris.
Greetings, esteemed and elected civil servants of the Cuyahoga County Council. My name is Napoleon Harris. I'm the pastor of Antioch Baptist Church. We were together last week talking about our beloved 7-3 Cleveland Browns. Today I stand before you not so much as a sports fan, but as a pastor, a member of the clergy. I am dressed, as you will note, in my holy vestments, namely my bandit collar. This collar is a symbol of being under the constraint of the gospel. It is a constant reminder that I am yoked, that is literally tied to Christ, and thus the high ideas of justice, peace, and human flourishing. Today, as a bonded man, I'm asking you, what is it that you are tied to? Your vote is your voice. Will you be tied to the status quo and protocol more than you will be to democracy? I ask because the budget change is a matter of democracy. The people asked for it and the people got it. Will you choose to be tied and bonded to indigent children, the most vulnerable of us, in a public way, or will you choose differently? I'm asking today, what are you bonded to? What constrains you? Will you choose to be bonded as I am to serve the most vulnerable, to serve democracy, to serve justice, or will you make a different choice? Now, I realize that you are in a tough spot. My parochial school pal, Mr. Gallagher, has waxed very eloquently that this budget issue did not come about the right way. Mr. Gallagher, Judge Gallagher, just did the same. But the issue is here, and it's in your very capable hands. You were born for this moment, and I believe the right thing is to vote in the best interest for our children and for democracy. So please stand with us, be tied, be bonded with your constituents, and vote in the interest of democracy and in the interest of children. I am wearing my values. I'm dressed in them. Your vote will show us yours. I hope that you will be bonded to our children, to justice, and to democracy. Thank you for your time. Blessings.
Lou?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, the weather is getting colder, and our budget hearing is getting to the middle towards the end. However, it seems like we still have not really gotten our priorities straightened. Lots of things are important, but are they really important to the majority of the residents in the Cuyahoga County, or just a few interest parties? Yes, we do have a complicated rules and regulations in every part of the department in the government. But the conflicts right now we see in the budget is really the main point that we have to start straightening out our priorities. If we do not really put all the health and human services as a higher priorities, then lots of things later will become the burdens and accumulated to make the situation worse for us. And this has been the situation we have been in. Then you have all other things coming up. Yes, buildings can get wear and tear. They need repairs. Yes, sports stadiums have the same issue. But still, if the way we administrate all these matters, the way we manage these matters, we still keep the same priority as before, then we will not get us out of this hole. Do we still want to promote the priorities is only downtown business instead of the business countywide? Do we still want to make the priorities is only good for certain people's, their well-beings instead of majority of the ordinary residents, their well-beings. Please understand, not all residents can be fully informed with everything. And we only have 3 minutes each person when we come up here to make public comments. So I'm here to really show my appreciation to the public testimony, that particular section, which give us a little bit more time with some interactions. This is how people can learn things. It doesn't matter it's a regular residents or even all of you. In the past, I attended a meeting, I noticed lots of the proposal when they come up here, even they have lots of things hidden from you, so you have to ask questions. Please do the same to set our priorities straight now for most of the ordinary people in this county. Thank you.
That concludes the public comment portion for today's meeting.
All right, thank you, Andrea. At this time, I will pass the gavel to Councilman Miller to begin chairing our budget hearing.
Thank you very much, President Jones. And I would now ask that the clerk please read the resolution into the record.
Resolution 2023-0285, adopting the 2024-2025 biennial operating budget and capital improvements program.
Thank you very much. And my colleagues, the plan for today's meeting is that first we're going to consider a package of amendments that's been developed by council. Second, we're going to consider an amendment related to the $650,000 in juvenile justice defense funds that we've been talking about. Third, we will consider administration technical amendments. And then finally, if we are ready, we will refer the resolution as amended to the full council. I will note that today we're only going to be approving amendments by motion, and that the actual substitute version will be accepted at the council meeting on November the 28th. This will give our staff and the administration time to make sure that the substitute version is technically correct. At this point, for purposes of discussion, I would now move that we approve the package of proposed budget amendments and ask if there is a second.
Second.
Thank you very much. And now Trevor McAleer, our staff financial policy advisor, will describe the changes in the amendment package.
Good afternoon, Council. Trevor McAleer, County Council staff. The list that we will be talking about right now, you should have at your dais, and the list of council amendments to the 2024-2025 biennial budget is currently sponsored by Councilman Miller, Council President Jones, and Councilwoman Meredith Turner. And what we have on the presentation on the TV screens are slides taken from each of the department's request to refresh council members' memories of what was presented to them and the background of each item. So if you have any reference, you've seen everything that's on the screen except for the upper right-hand column in red and black there, which states how much the amendment is listed being proposed by the three council members. Specifically, you'll see not every single department has a slide. I will verbally present those because we did not have a PowerPoint for that particular recommended amendment. So if there's any questions between each one, please don't hesitate to ask. So the first one there is the Board of Elections request. They have asked for their presidential election year 2024 and their municipal election year 2025 to be right-sized between what was recommended from the administration and what the Board of Elections will need to carry out the elections, particularly in the presidential election year. It was $263,000 in the poll worker recruitment budget line, and then in the municipal year of 2025, $635,000 was what they needed, and both items made the recommended list of proposed amendments. The next slide and the next recommended budget amendment is the one-time cost of $350,000 for a new inbound mail sorting equipment. As Director Prelati presented to you, they currently have one machine, and it's an older machine. This one would provide the election with a backup, the elections administration with a backup voting machine. It's one-time cost of $350,000 in 2024. The next one, Director Johnson from Information Technology presented this capital slide to you. If you recall, Council a couple years ago, for the first time under the new form of government, put $4 million per year in IT capital refresh for the county-wide. And in the recommended budget to Council, that was zeroed out. So in discussions with Councilman Miller and the director, this would provide as a starting point of $2 million for IT capital refresh for both years. There's also discussions with the administration about potentially using some leftover dollars that's projected from this year's budget and rolling that over into future capital needs that the department has. As you can see, for the next 2 years, Director Johnson is presenting over $4 million of what he believes will be needed during the capital refresh. The next one is a minor adjustment from the Inspector General's office. As you can see, this was the slide from the Inspector General when she presented her budget to you. And discussions working with OBM about trying to figure out the difference between the Inspector General's request and the executive's recommended budget. In 2023, the Inspector General is projected to spend less than their current appropriation. So it's a small adjustment of $5,000 per year to try to right size with what OBM is projecting the Inspector General will spend versus what she is saying she would need to complete her budget. I think the chairman of the Finance Committee has committed to reviewing this as the year goes on to see if the Inspector General would need additional dollars. But based off current projections, the $5,000 amendment should get them to what they probably will end up needing for 24 and 25. The next three, there is not a slide for it, but it is for the juvenile court. This does not include, at this time, the assigned counsel. We're going to address that shortly after we go over the list of proposed amendments on this list of package of amendments. The first one would give juvenile court $2 million in overtime. Currently in the recommended budget,
We need to go to the next slide.
we do not have a juvenile court slide because
Oh, okay.
there wasn't a presentation,
Okay.
Chairman. So this would give $2 million in overtime expenses. Currently, for 2023, the court is projected approximately $5 million in overtime. In the recommended budget, the amount of in overtime there wasn't any appropriation for the overtime budget for juvenile court. This would be a starting point for the court at $2 million. As a reminder, the recommended budget also includes 26 new detention officers at the detention facility. So hopefully, once they're fully staffed, we can see that $5 million of overtime decrease than what we're currently seeing right now. But right now, the recommended budget would include $2 million if this proposed amendment gets adopted. The next two items related to juvenile court is what Judge O'Malley referenced during his budget presentation. One was being the increased cost in medical services for those at the juvenile detention facility. That's $250,000 for 2024 and $361,000 for 2025. And juvenile court bid that service out. They have a contract in place, but the recommended budget that was to council was short by those $2 amounts. So this would provide enough money for the medical services contract. The final item of $250,000 per year for juvenile court would provide funding for when those in the juvenile court facility have to leave the facility for health care. This was also presented by Judge O'Malley in his presentation that there isn't money for that cost. So $250,000 is recommended as part of the budget amendment package that would give a juvenile court a starting point in terms of having dollars set aside to be able to treat those that have to leave the facility for health care costs.
And on that item, that also provide some funding so that if juvenile court is able to work out a program with MedWorks to provide vision, dental, and women's health care services for the juveniles, it provides some funding to start that as well.
The next two items is the Personnel Review Commission. The director, she presented and she was requesting that she would see an increase in her budget of $25,000 for 2024 and $50,000 in 2025 for the remote testing and proctoring services. Currently, they provide remote testing at the PRC. They also provide in-person testing as well, but this would provide funding for their new contract that expires in June of next year. And then she also presented, if you recall, differences in terms of what her recommended budget was versus what she is saying she needs for her budget moving forward for the biannual budget. That's about $10,000 in difference that has also made the proposed budget list. Planning Commission, when the director presented, her main request was that she currently has a staffing of 19 FTEs. At the time when the budget was created, she only had 18, so the one FTE did not make the recommended budget. This proposal would give her $121,000 for 2024 and $137,000 for 2025 to fill that current position that she has filled with the 19th FTE. She also requested, as you can see from that slide, funding for a new FTE, but I believe Chairman Miller has had conversations with her about waiting until she fills that position before it's appropriated in the budget, because it's a specialized position and it's going to take some time for her to be able to fill that position.
Position's been vacant for a couple of years.
Yep. And she was okay with that. The next two slides on your screen is related to the Public Defender's Office. This is not related, again, to the assigned counsel. We're going to address that shortly. This is when the public defender was in here requesting $1.1 million for 2024 and a little bit more in 2025. As you can see, there is the list of what he requested. And as a reminder to the council, the state of Ohio will reimburse the county at 85% of their total expenses. So the net difference here is a little less than $180,000 or so each year because of the reimbursement that we currently get from the state. That has fluctuated over the years, but right now it's at 85%. Biggest cost of the increases for their existing staff that they have, and then some computer refresh and some other things that was presented by Colin at his budget hearings. Public safety, again, there's not a slide for public safety's presentation, but council, I want to say about 6 years ago, put in firefighter grants that public safety gives out to the municipalities within the county. In discussions with Brandy, the $200,000 that was typically provided in years past is not in the current budget for public safety, and as well as some refresh radios for CCOMs. She requested that for a total of $75,000. So that is being restored to the public safety budget of $275,000 per year. The next three, which we have a slide for one of the items, is for the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office currently has $6 million of overtime budgeted for 2024-2025. In their 2023 budget, OBM is projecting that they'll spend about $20 million in overtime. The proposal here is to increase their overtime expense line from $6 million to $8 million, so an increase of $2 million per year for overtime expenses. An additional increase for the sheriff's office would be to increase their current corrections officers. In 2023, they had 690 COs budgeted. Council, if you may recall, you increased that back at the last biannual budget. As of pay 12, when the budget was created, they had 596 on staff, and the administration bumped that number up to 636 for the recommended budget. However, as of last week, they were at full capacity at 636 as presented to Chairman Miller. So the proposal here is
They were actually at 645.
645, okay. The proposal here would be to bump that up to 650. So that would be about $1.4 million per year to increase the budget amount. And as have been presented to this committee many of times, you know, they'll hire 15 and they'll lose 3 or 4 right away. So it's an ongoing changing, ever-changing number, but the budgeted number would take this to 650. The next item on the list of proposed amendments is what is up on the screen. The sheriff came in and requested an increase of 8 K-9 units. He currently has 2 for the county jail. The proposed budget amendment would not completely fund the 8, but take it up by an additional 4 for a total of 6. As you can see, it's not just the purchase of the K-9 and training of the K-9, but there's vehicles, cages, heat sensors, fans. So the total cost per K-9 unit is $42,410. So for 4 K-9 units, it would be a total of $169,640, which is a one-time expense in 2024. The final sheriff item, he requested this as part of his decision item package. It was not in the recommended budget, and that is $250,000 for stab-proof vests for the corrections officers. Again, it's a one-time cost of $250,000 that is on the proposed budget amendment package. This slide is from Soil and Water when they present it. Currently, they receive $100,000 general fund subsidy as part of their operating budget. That has been relatively flat, I want to say, for about the last 8 years. Council bumped it up. It used to be about $78,000 years ago and bumped it up to $100,000. When the director was presenting, she requested an additional $250,000, or sorry, request to go to $250,000 from $100,000. So this proposed set of amendments would increase the annual subsidy from $100,000 to $50,000.
150.
To $150,000. The last item for the general fund, which there is not a slide for, but the director of OBM presented this item, was $507,000 for the soldiers and sailors. It's a small request to complete their budget. So in total, those were all the general fund items. In total, if this package is approved for 2024, it's a little shy of $9.6 million in additional appropriation for these items, and 9.4 for 2025 of general fund. The list of HHS levy items are smaller than the general fund items, and hopefully they'll go a little faster. In the list of levy proposals is a slight modest reduction in the Adams Board annual appropriation. Currently, they get a little bit north of $43 million. The proposed reduction would take them down to an annual subsidy of $41 million. The rationale behind that $41 million number is they currently have a significant reserve, as was presented to this committee. The Adams Board is projecting that they're going to end the year with a $35 million reserve. Our OBM director believes that number is closer to $41 million. So we're anticipating the Adams Board annual reserve falling somewhere between $35 and $41 million before the year's end, which Chairman Miller has committed to continue to review that as the year progresses into 2024. So it would be a modest reduction in the Adams Board annual subsidy as we see those reserve levels over the next year or so. At the same time, with the reduction of the Adams Board, there would be an increase to the Metro Health annual subsidy. Currently, they get a little bit more than $32 million, $32.4 million per year. This increase would take their annual subsidy to $35 million. Dr. Steed was here presenting. She requested that her annual subsidy go to $40 million per year, but this proposal would take it to $35 million per year. The last couple in the Health and Human Services levy budget for FCFC would see an increase in $100,000 per year. This would be for the literacy cooperative that would provide ongoing operational support for the Dolly Parton reading program that was presented. I think at most of the budget hearings, individuals from the organization came in requesting these dollars. They were seeking $250 or $250,000 per year, but this would provide $100,000 on an annual basis for the next 2 years. The next one is a $25,000 increase in the HHS Director's Office budget. This would be $25,000 for the annual food assistance contracts that go to the United Way to provide those dollars to the Food Bank and the Hunger Network. Their funding has remained at flat, actually, I believe since the Fitzgerald administration of around $1.2 million. Council and then Executive Fitzgerald bumped that up from what it was prior to that. But they've seen a pretty stagnant funding since that time. So this would provide an additional $25,000 per year in the annual food service contract. The next one is a one-time cost of $200,000 in the HHS Director's Office budget. That would provide strategic planning for all the Health and Human Service divisions under Administrator Merriman. Councilwoman Conwell has requested this item be included in there over the last couple years and have been working with the director to make this happen. So this would be 2024 funding of $200,000. The last item, which the Director of Homeless Services presented, we are still working on a final number with Director Merriman on what it's going to take. But as the director presented, we know we're going to have an increase in operational cost at the at the men's and women's shelter. We don't know exactly how much yet. They're still working on finalizing a number. But what this proposed amendment would do would put $500,000 in 2024 for the increased operating costs and $1 million in for 2025, knowing that we probably will not see those operating costs increase immediately in 2024. In total, but in the Health and Human Services levy, it would increase the 2024 HHS levy subsidy by $825,000 and a little over $1.1 million in 2025.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and I'll now ask for questions or comments regarding the amendment package. Councilman Tron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the Metro, we did have presentations in the open session where we had asked what the status was of an agreement whereby we would have the opportunity to look at not only the support for the indigent care, but the support that we provided in all the other aspects of putting together their $1 billion package. At least it occurred to me that when we heard the presentation from the podium from Metro, they discounted that as though that was an unimportant aspect as far as being able to look beyond the indigent care and to be able to look at other records out there. We clearly have seen that in the formation of this county council and county executive positions from 13 years ago, that the ability to look at records of this nature are important on behalf of this body, because I think that we found that if you look at some of the problems in the last 13 years within Metro itself, there have been a number of challenges, some of which have actually resulted in CEOs that have gone to jail and things of that nature. So to ask this to review and to be in a status, do you know what the status is of them rejecting our request to be able to look at beyond just the support for the indigent care?
Yeah, so through the chair, Councilman Schron, yes, the current language we sent over to Metro Health senior staff, I want to say last Monday or Tuesday, having that language in the proposed agreement that we plan on bringing forward to the full body. It is currently under review by the senior team at Metro Health. They have not said yes and they have not said no to that language. So we're waiting to hear back on their acceptance of the language. I know a couple of their senior team is here today, and Mike King, my coworker who's been working on this, is also in the room if there's any additional questions on that, but we are waiting to hear back from Metro Health on if they're going to agree to that language or not.
And I had the impression when this was being presented in the budget hearings that somehow they perceived that we were the foot draggers on getting this thing processed. And I'm not trying to find fault or blame one way or the other, but this has gone on for months and months to try to get just some simple language of oversight out there because these are the good offices of this county that are standing behind not only this piece, but the entire good offices as far as what allowed them to be able to go forward. Had they not got this language, do you have any idea it would have been impactful in their ability to get their bonds and their bond ratings?
I think related to their bond ratings, as I presented the last committee, Mr. Schron, without the line of credit that the county provided, I don't know how successful they would have been with getting their bonds.
So, and that's still in place at this point in time. So
That is.
if when we get down to actually voting on this, if that language has not been settled, I will not be supporting an increase in regards to this because I think it's only appropriate that the taxpayers get the benefit of what they're doing when they're funding this. And somehow they mix these together as far as care for what the hospital is doing and our financial obligations to the taxpayers. And there's nobody up here that doesn't care anymore. We all care for those individuals and what this hospital is doing, but we also have a responsibility, I believe, to the taxpayers of what is happening with the dollars. Thank you.
Councilman, if I can just add to that, it is that final piece of the agreement that we're trying to finalize with Metro Health.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding the amendment package? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment package say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. The ayes have it and the amendment package is approved. And it is now time to hear the proposed amendment regarding juvenile defense funds. Would one of the sponsors of that amendment like to make a motion?
Sure. I move that the amendment to restore the $650,000 of assigned counsel fees be restored to the juvenile court budget.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Okay, the motion is properly before us. I don't think we need a long debate. We've already had 2 or 3 extensive discussions on this issue, but I will now recognize the sponsor to briefly explain what the amendment does, and then I will call upon any colleagues who wish to make further comments.
Sure, Committee Chair. I just want to summarize briefly what was presented to us in the form of our budget. That what we were presented with was a premise that assigned counsel might not be less qualified than the public defender's office, but somehow that the bind over juveniles get better representation through a vertical system, a vertical model at the public defender's office. That was the premise that we were presented with. However, this premise was never borne out with facts, with committee hearings, with discussion from all the stakeholders, from the juvenile court judge, from the prosecutor's office, and I think it would benefit all of us on this body to understand the system, what it means to have mandatory bindovers, what it means to have discretionary bindovers, who actually proposes the bindovers, what is the law, and then to drill down on whether this vertical model actually makes a difference in the outcomes. I would present to you, I don't know the answer to that. From my experience, I have a differing opinion, but I think it would benefit all of us to sit down, understand what we're voting on. And have to say that this is not a binary question as proposed, and as some would say, that either we care about juveniles being bound over or we don't, depending on how we vote on this particular issue. I think that's false. I think it's incumbent upon us to understand actually what's going on. What we've been given is a shell game, because what this budget presented was $650,000 would be taken out of assigned counsel fees and automatically sent over to the public defender's office, not actually ignoring that the administrative judge from the juvenile court would be back at us and asking for a restoration of these funds regardless of what happens today. So we would be double billed, and some members on finance were okay with that, but let's be honest. If that money needs to be restored anyways, why not address that now instead of pretending it's not going to happen? So I take objection to that, what I call a shell game, to just move money knowing it's going to have to be restored anyways. So today's the time to restore it to juvenile court, have a responsible meeting with all the stakeholders, understand what's going on, and I implore my colleagues to investigate this so we can all be on the same page about how we're going to handle this issue of juveniles being bound over. Nobody likes this. I don't think anybody on this council wants to see juveniles bound over. I think we should look at best practices ourselves and see what's going on in this county. So that's my position, and ask for the support. And I totally agree with the GCC and everybody else. We should do some due diligence to find out what's the best practice.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Vice President Stevens.
I am glad that my colleague understands that there's a dialogue that must take place. It is incumbent on us to begin as adults in the room to adult, that nobody has the perfect answer or we wouldn't be here. But we do, my colleague is asking for respect for a process. I know that we must do something different. We continue to lose more and more young boys of brown and black color to a justice system which they never return from as whole adults. It is incumbent upon us to find a way to find a better solution. It appears that there are other counties in this state that have found better solutions. I spent a portion of my Friday evening, thank you, Prosecutor O'Malley, for taking the time to talk with me. I know it's not your job to find all the solutions, but together, if the prosecutor slows down, the courts give us someone to talk to, this county council is ready to try and work with folks. We've historically proven that even when we don't want to, we will sit down and talk to our constituents. You elect us to serve you, give us a chance to serve you well. So I'll be proposing something after this one gets through to make sure that we do something, not just say something, but do something to help the youth of this county live better quality of life and have options for their positive options for their futures. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Gallagher, followed by Sweeney and Tuma.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding this legislation that's before us, what happened, and I've said it before and everybody knows ad nausea, that this was not the way to do it. It put the council in a peculiar situation where we're having to be the bad guys. Sometimes we have to be the bad guys. We don't want to be, but we got to do the right thing. And the right thing is follow the process. Process wasn't followed, and here we are. The executive should not have made this promise, should not have done what he did. But, and thank you, Reverend, for your information here. The good news is that under the paperwork that you gave me is the appropriateness of chief executive inserting a budget item. There is no rule or reason that the county executive cannot add a budget item on his own. That's correct. If this legislation before us is successful, the executive has every opportunity, if he believes in what he believes in this situation, he can find in his budget $650,000. and properly put it in the public defender's coffers. I don't know if he will. I got a few bucks that I'd be willing to bet on which way he won't go, because money's tight. And as you've seen here, in the words "kick the can down the road" are appropriate. We're adding $8 million to overtime for the sheriff. The sheriff needs 20. That's 2 years. It's $24 million we are not addressing, that we know are coming down the pike. That's not your issue, and we have to deal with it. Eventually, it will be your issue because you're taxpayers. But we have to follow a process. We have separately elected partners in this county, and that's the courts and the administration and the council and the public defender, not elected but appointed, and the prosecutor. None of them, other than the executive, wanted to do this way. It now is in the hands of the executive, if he truly, again, believes in his position, to find the 650 to do what he did without telling the judges, without telling the prosecutor, and without telling the public defender, as they've all under oath testified. So there is a solution out there if we are successful in making whole the judges of the juvenile court. And what Ms. Stevens is saying is true. We're here to find solutions to problems. But in this instance, we're not going to find a solution to this problem by going behind the back of the judges who deal with this, whom are the final say in this. We cannot alienate the very individuals that have the final say. And the way in which this is done does just that. It was wrong, maybe a freshman mistake, I'll grant him that. But there is an opportunity for him to make himself whole regarding what he wants to do. What we have to do, in my opinion, is restore the court to being whole. And then we can move on from there. And if there are discussions to be had, I would suggest we have lawyers on this council. We have people that worked in the courts for a career in this council. We have staff that have worked in the courts as prosecutors and administrators in the courts. We could be a part of a solution, but not by doing it the way in which this was done. It was inappropriate, and it was wrong, and it needs to be addressed. And hopefully, we can see that and then move forward. Thank you.
Councilman Sweeney, followed by Tuma.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my colleagues. Trevor, thanks for standing up there. Thank you for all the emails over the weekend. I try to respond to everybody, and I had the privilege of sharing my thoughts with you, and I'll just do it publicly now. My premise, how I govern, is a question's called, the work is done, decisions made, and an explanation given. And at this particular time, I didn't even know the question was going to be called. The work wasn't done. The vote I'm going to do is put it back to the juvenile court. But I can't even explain what's happening right now. You see a lot of he said, she said. You got the data, but Councilwoman, Chairwoman Simon hit it right on the head. And if it's a 6-5 vote, right, after we're all done with our due diligence, I'll be able to explain my vote. And today I can't. And if I have to do the work myself, which I don't think I'm going to have to, if it's in a committee, if it's in Chairman Gallagher's, if it's in operations, I don't really care where it's at. But I've heard so many different polar opposite statements from started with Judge O'Malley saying, what'd you take the money from? And I didn't even know about that. And then Cullen coming up saying, I didn't ask for it, but the passion of the topic. No one disagrees that the bind over system is messed up nationally. And with the data that we have right here, it's overwhelmingly. But listen to the judge today, I didn't factor in the situation in Cuyahoga County and in Cleveland. So I'm looking forward to getting knee deep in this thing. And I will be able to explain myself. And the beauty of a 2-year budget, just to my folks out there that we talk to, is every 1 year, halfway through, we take a peek at it. And when the testimony was up at the dais or on the podium, the statement was, it's not happening until 25. So we got this year. And the next time, when this 24 is over, we have another chance to look at that
and I'm committed to making sure that work gets done. So I just wanted to talk to you that way and not to Trevor, and I appreciate it. And where's the Markowitz? You said you'd wave to me. Thank you. It's nice seeing you. Thanks for your conversation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Tuma.
Thank you. Through the chair, yeah, just want to say I support this piece of legislation. Substantively, there may be legitimate arguments and discussion, but again, as several of my colleagues have pointed out, it has to be through the interested parties. And just like we discussed bail reform, you know, it's the judges and the prosecutors and the public defenders who are really the parties in interest here who have to work on remedying the issues of bindovers in the county. We hold the power of the purse here. We deal with budgetary issues when it comes to these matters, and doing an end round through the executive was not the way to go on this, and I've expressed my disdain for that, and therefore I will support this piece of legislation. Thank you.
So, two things weigh heavy on my heart. One is that the rate of juvenile bindovers is much higher than in comparable counties, and I do think that represents process as well as crime rates. And also that the vast majority of our bindovers are African American males. I think we do need to do something different, so I am not in favor of this amendment, and Councilman Tron is next.
Thank you. One of the challenges of going through the budgetary process is that some people say, gee whiz, I got my money or I didn't get my money, so therefore there's a winner and there's a loser as to how these processes work out. And it would be my position as to what's taking place is that the winning concept is that we are having discussions about a product and a process and a solution that maybe wasn't taking place beforehand. And whether that's our responsibility or we missed it, missed the boat, we somehow were not as cognizant as we are today. I think that there is where the benefit is for all of us out there. I will be supporting Ms. Simon's amendment in regards to this, but somebody's going to say, oh, gee whiz, then I lost. No. The other half of it is also what was being suggested that we're going to, from Ms. Stevens, that we're going to follow this up. And if you are not in this room with that same exuberance, then you've missed the point of where this whole conversation needs to go. And that is, let's get all the facts on the table. Let's figure out where we need to be. Let's make adjustments if we need to. But the benefit of the win for everybody is that it's on the table. We've heard about it. This technique was not necessarily the best in a number of our points of view, but that doesn't mean that another 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, we won't get closer to getting it correct and as far as in your point of view as to where we need to be. So with that, I think that the win is you got our attention. It's going to get hearing. It's going to get another review. And I know that the Chief Justice of the Juvenile Court is just as eager to make sure that we've got citizen support as everybody else is in regards to this. So with that, I don't see that just because the money is not there means that there's a winner and a loser. It means that you've got our attention. It means we're going to go forward. It means that we will keep this aware, and we are going to be a body that pays attention to what is the right thing to do. Thank you.
President Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have listened intently to the discussion about the funding for the lawyers representing juveniles in the bind-over matters in our juvenile court. I thank the members of the GCC who have diligently attended these meetings and raised important issues about how this county administers juvenile justice. Numerous issues have been raised that deserve full discussion in a public forum. 1, does Cuyahoga County have a disproportionate number of juvenile bindovers than other large urban counties in Ohio? If so, why? 2, is there data to suggest that the efforts of the public defenders lead to better outcomes in representing juveniles facing bindovers to adult court? 3, has there been a determination of and or identification of the racial inequalities involved in the entire juvenile justice process. All of these questions and many others deserve to be asked and deserve to be answered. But the question in front of me and my colleagues today is a simple budgetary matter. The county council is a separate branch of government. We do not tell the judges how to do their jobs, nor do we adjust their budgets in an arbitrary manner. I recently toured the Juvenile Detention Center with Judge Thomas O'Malley and his team. They were open about the issues they faced: staffing, budgetary, and operational. It is his responsibility to make the decisions that our laws leave to him and his colleagues on the bench. This includes the assignment of lawyers to represent indigent defendants facing charges in juvenile court. Moving forward, the questions I asked will need to be answered. I have all the faith that Councilman Gallagher, as chair of the Public Safety and Justice Affairs Committee, will ask the involved parties, lawyers, judges, advocates, to appear to discuss the progress on these important issues. Yes, we will continue to fund the juvenile court. It is our obligation to do so. But we will also continue to ask questions and seek information about the progress on the important issues raised over the last few months. That, too, is our duty. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Simon.
Just to follow up with a notion that by throwing $650,000 at the juvenile court somehow is going to remedy the heavy-hearted issue of bindovers. That's indiscriminate funding. And what I find interesting is that the public defender didn't ask for this money. The public defender did not articulate a need to fortify or increase the vertical model structure specifically. So I really question how just giving the public defender's office money is going to fix the bindover rate. And I think that's the critical question that underlies all of our statements. I think we all come at this with the same intention, but it's also our job, as I said, and all of us say, to look at the issue and how best are we going to be able to remedy that. And by just throwing money at an agency that doesn't even want it or ask for it is, in my mind, borders on a little bit of reckless, but notwithstanding that, and more importantly, we're going to spend $650,000 on top of that. So we're really just giving $1.3 million away, because the judge is going to come back for the $650 anyways. So I don't want to be a broken record, but as a body, we've got to just have some discrimination and be able to see how we're going to solve a problem, and instead of throwing money at a department that doesn't even want it or ask for it. That's troubling to me, that we would consider doing something just to think somehow that that's going to solve a problem. I think we're better than that on this body.
Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, listening to everybody, I'm in full agreement that we need to go forward with some hearings on this. I'm on the Public Safety and Justice Committee. I'm looking forward to that. But what really concerned me right off the bat was the fact that that money was moved from the juvenile court to the public defender's office with no discussion. And the day that we found that out in the budget hearings, I asked who is it that was involved in that movement of the money, and there was nobody here. So eventually someone was sent down from the executive's office to talk, and when asked, were you there during this idea of moving this money, he was not. So we never got an answer from the executive's office whose idea this was to move this money. And that is a big concern. So I'm looking forward to hearings in Public Safety and Justice, and thank you for your time.
Okay, we've had a good discussion, and I'm about to ask for the roll call, but before I do, I'd like to restate for clarity what yes and no means. If you vote yes, You are voting to approve the amendment that's presented that would change the budget by moving $650,000 in juvenile defense funds from the public defender's office back to juvenile court. A no vote keeps these additional funds in the public defender's office. The clerk will please call the roll.
Ms. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
I'm going to wait till the roll call is correct.
Yeah, why is that happening?
Cheryl, next.
No,
I'm sorry,
no.
Cheryl? Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Tuma?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher? Mr. Schran?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell? Council President Jones?
Yes.
The motion, I'm sorry.
I
Oh, I'm
have
sorry,
not been
Mr.
called.
Miller.
No.
The motion carries 10 voting in the affirmative and 2 casting dissenting votes.
Can we correct that to 9 yes and 2 no?
The motion carries.
9 and 2, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the motion carries and the amendment will become part of the resolution. Next on our agenda,
Mr. Chairman, before we move forward,
yes,
I'd like to, if we're going to step outside the box, I always love to step outside the box. This is something that needs to have a recommendation and maybe a decision from this body now. We all, every single one of us said we care about the children that are a major part of this problem. If we care, rather than just saying we don't like how this was handled, I'm going to lean into my colleague, Mr. Gallagher, to help solve this problem. I'm going to lean into my colleague, Mr. Kelly, to help solve this problem. I'm going to lean into my colleague and friend, Sonny Simon, to help solve this problem. We need someone from the judge's office. We need someone from the public defender's office. We need someone from county council to take a lead. We need the county exec to be with us, not someplace in discussion about what's wrong or right. These children need to be saved. They need to be saved now. We also need someone from the prosecutor's office. If we are to be tied to justice in Cuyahoga County, under your leadership, I ask that you formally, within the next 90 days, call together a group of representatives from each of the parties I just mentioned, meet, come up with your first round of solutions. You know that by training and by inclination, I'm a recovering planner. So I want to make sure that we have a plan before we break for the holidays to begin to pull everyone together and to get this done the right way this time under your leadership. And I, of course, will be the sous chef, the assistant, the aide, if need be, to get this done correctly. Thank you.
thank you very much. It is, we've finished the vote. Let's not continue.
I ask,
Ask me a question on the floor, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I agree with you. And what we'll do is start where everybody should have started at the beginning with the court. So let me put that together.
and should we vote on this, or can we?
I don't see it as, I don't think it's necessary as a motion, but I think we all are in agreement, like you said, to move forward with the court as the lead. I would like the prosecutor, the public defender. I would like advocates of those that are the victims. I want everybody involved so we get a full view of what we're dealing with. And as usual, we're not the decision makers, we're the backup. And we'll be there for any financial support that they may at that time all decide that they need. I think that's a good way to go about it, and I appreciate your position. And
Mr. Chairman,
within 90 days is reasonable.
And Mr. Chairman, if you would allow me to make one final comment as well.
Yes, Council President Jones.
So again, I echo the comments that have been said by Councilwoman Cheryl Stevens. If you saw, I just stepped out for a moment just to speak to Judge O'Malley. And again, to let him know that we will be talking, and it will be in a spirit of partnership, but we are going to look to, and he has said he is willing to talk and begin to address these important concerns. In my other life, I am a deacon in my church. There are many times I've been in this facility with individuals who regardless of what grade they were in, they are human beings, regardless of what charges that have been laid against them. I would stand with the individuals as the minister stood there with his cloth and his cloak. What he is binded to, I am equally binded, and I have stood with individuals. And I'll say this, as we address this issue, the reality is there is a tough on crime environment that we operate within. And I'm not here to say who is guilty, how great the charges were, and not against them. I'm here to defend the humanity of the individuals who are in this facility, who by the letter of the law are innocent until they have gotten their day in court. So I look forward to the conversations, and again, in a spirit of partnership with our judges, with Judge O'Malley, with every entity and institution that wants to be a part of the ultimate solution to these challenging issues. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I would like a comment then, if I can. I know we voted. The question of who we stand with is for justice, for the criminal justice system, which encompasses all of these stakeholders, not just one side, not just the other, but a holistic approach to include all of these stakeholders. And that includes victims. And that includes the woman who was shot twice in the stomach, who happened to be a law student, whose life is ruined, had to leave the law school, and is impaired from those gunshot wounds. So when we talk about humanity, she needs to be included in this discussion. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Quick statement, sir, please.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to publicly thank everyone for the phone calls and emails that I received. I believe that conversations involving juvenile bindovers continues to be important, and they've been enlightening. To me, it was a tough decision, but I believe that we all benefit from this increased scrutiny and dialogue, whether it's the need to solve the crisis at the Jane Edna Hunter building or the need to look at alternative arrangements to address the number of bindover hearings. I will continue to use this platform to advocate for children. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It is now time to discuss the administration technical amendments. Note that because of the amendment that we just passed, the administration technical amendment on the Public Defender's Office is no longer necessary. May I have a motion and a second to approve the administration technical amendments as a package, except for the one that relates to the Public Defender's Office?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded, and I'm going to call upon Director Parfiowitz to present the administration technical amendments.
Good afternoon, Chairman Miller, members of council, Walter Parfiowitz, from the Fiscal Office, the Budget Management Office specifically. So I have one slide to go over all the adjustments. It'll be fairly brief. I'll just begin. So I have two amendments. The first amendment's to the Public Safety and Justice Services subsidy. The Public Safety and Justice Services budget was set properly, but the subsidy transfer was not. So the first adjustment is for that. The second amendment is to the Soil and Water subsidy for 2025. The subsidy for 2025 includes $25,000 for the Healthy Urban Tree Canopy, which is, as you know, not budgeted for 2025, so we're going to reduce it by $25,000. Next, I have I have 8 technical adjustments. Okay, they're up there now. So I'm on number 3 right now. So number 3 is to remove the temporary board that was budgeted for 2024. That's in the Board of Revision. Item number 4 is to correct the challenge loan program budget for 2024. Item 5 and 6, there's 2 number 5s. Those are to correct the 27th pay reserves. Those were budgeted in some accounting units that we're not using anymore. All these items are already included in the budget. This is just making some changes in the pieces. Number 6 is to correct the RTA bus subsidy, $200,000. Item number 7 is to correct the self-insurance and hospitalization fund budgets. These are the employer-employee contributions. These are historical numbers. They need to be trued up to what they currently are running at now. Number 8 is to correct the IT budget. As you recall, we moved the multimedia group to communications, but the wrong code was used in the move. So this basically moves the budget within 2 accounting units of the IT budget. There's no impact in aggregate. Number 9 is to correct the innovation budget for the Cleveland Foundation Fellows. Number 10 is, number 10 we don't need. It's to move the assigned council budget to personnel services, but we're not going to do that. And number 11 is to remove the public defender special revenue fund budget that was added in error. So we're going to move the appropriation. We're also going to move the revenue, so it's a no impact at all.
So, Director, could you say a little bit more, give us a little more detail on the first one, which appears to be an actual substantive amendment, and why it's needed?
Yeah, so we budgeted the public safety and justice services budget properly. We just didn't budget the portion of the general fund that transfers from the general fund budget to the special revenue fund budget that funds their budget.
So this is actually technical in nature as well, is that correct?
Yeah,
okay.
That's the one that's really substantive here. All the rest of these are just moving around the pieces.
Are there any questions by my colleagues on the administration technical amendments? Ms. Simon.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I will be, before we ultimately vote on this budget, I'm concerned about taking out the second year of the tree canopy. I've told Chair Miller this. This was important to continue on with this program, and I am going to be looking at ways to add that back in for 25, especially coming from an administration that really believes in climate change. I'm actually surprised this came out. It's supposed to come back in some different form, I'm told by Chairman Miller, correct?
Correct.
So if we're looking at coming back with something to encompass the tree canopy in 25, why aren't we now looking to budget that? That's my question. So I will be meeting with the chair about that, because if we're anticipating the executive coming back with a new iteration of the tree canopy in 25, then we should have the funds available to do that. I'm concerned about just jumping in ad hoc and asking for money. Let's put the money in now if we anticipate that coming to us. And I think we should support that when it's a regional, very favorable amenity we provide to our communities, that if I think each and every one of us will have, constituents come to us, our mayors, the council people, to tell us how important this is locally and globally for climate mitigation. So why aren't we, I will be looking to see how we can add something back in, Chairman Miller.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and I'm going to say a little bit more about this amendment, that like for this year, there's $25,000 in soil and water to administer the tree canopy program, and $975,000 in the planning commission. which is where the actual funds to the municipalities are allocated. And so for 2025, the 975,000 was not included in the Planning Commission, but was inadvertently kept in soil and water. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so this is actually just a technical amendment to be consistent. If we actually find a way to do the program in 2025, which I also would very much like to do, either in this form or another form, then we would need a consistent funding of the full program. So that's what this amendment does.
Well, I'm going to be presenting something to restore that in 25. So we have some space to do that.
Right, we
Right
do.
between now and voting on this. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, any other questions on the administration technicals? Hearing none, all in favor of these amendments, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. And the amendments are agreed to. Having considered our amendments, it is now time to deal with the question as a whole. Do we have a motion to refer Resolution 2023-285, the biennial budget, as amended to the full council for second reading?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'll approve this moving out, but I want the council to know that I'll be coming back with the tree canopy subsidy back into some form before we come to the full council with an amendment.
Okay, fine. Councilman Tron.
I, like my colleague, will be moving to approve this, to move it out. But if we don't have the Metro agreement in place after 6-8 months, I will not be supporting that increase, because I think it's clearly making a statement to us that they're thumbing their nose at us.
Any other comments? So I would like to thank Executive Ronayne, Council President Jones, and all of my colleagues, Trevor McAleer and all the staff, Walter Parfiowitz, Katie Gallagher, and the directors, and all the members of the public who participated in this process, everybody for their advice, support, and collaboration. I'm not pleased that we're putting forward a budget that is out of balance by about $10 million per year. But I would note that it's better to put forward a budget that accurately reflects expenses that we know we're going to incur, rather than one that doesn't present this. And so this situation raises our awareness about the importance to be more active about finding ways to reduce costs while maintaining the effectiveness of our programs. I will say that we should not read too much into the deficit, because we historically do underspend our budgets, and hopefully over the course of the year we'll have the opportunity to get closer in balance. And so, with that being said, I do believe that this budget does represent the needs of the county. It expresses the sentiment of the council. I believe the administration is willing to accept our amendments, and so I support the passage. And I'll check one more time for any further comment. Seeing none, the clerk will please call the roll on the resolution.
Calling the roll, Ms. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Conway, sorry, Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Simon, Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mr. Tuma?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher? Mr. Schran?
Yes.
Council President Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell? And the motion carries.
Mr. Miller gets a vote?
Yes. So, yes. So the resolution is agreed to and so recommended. Is there any miscellaneous business? Did you have something, Ms. Stevens? No. Okay, there being nothing further to call our attention, we are adjourned.